Hey everyone, Gerry Brown here with today's episode, one of two. So this is what's going to happen. Today we're listening for the beat beneath the music. And in Kuwait, the way people describe tunes can be a little different from what many listeners expect. Sometimes the music is understood less as a song and more as a rhythm. So that shift in language opens up a bigger story about how sound, culture, and tradition shape the way music is heard. Our esteemed guest is journalist Miss Emilie Pons, who covers the Middle East and North Africa and produces radio stories for Public Radio International. She spent years reporting across the region, and she joins us today on the Groove Don't Lie podcast to help unpack what that rhythm-centered way of hearing music means in Kuwait and why it matters. So, without any more pause, episode 1 of 2 on Groove Don't Lie.
I was recently in Kuwait in January, and I went there for a field trip for my dissertation. And I spoke to many people, and I spoke to scholars, I spoke to many musicians, and many musicians described to me some of the music that is performed in Kuwait and that has historically been very important for Kuwaiti music, and not just Kuwaiti music, but also Kuwaiti culture. So they described this music as rhythms. And so when, some of the musicians I was talking with, they were telling me, we play actually this rhythm and we play that rhythm. And for them, it meant that they were playing music, but that music specifically was referred to as different types of rhythms and different types of rhythmic combinations, different types of rhythmical choices, etc., and arrangements and combinations of different rhythms. And so it's kind of like every rhythm in Kuwaiti music defines a style of music, and also um, these different styles of music are associated to different geographies in Kuwait. So, for instance, you do have sea music and you do have desert music, and these are different types of rhythms, actually. But what's really interesting is that oftentimes, um, that music also incorporates singing and words. And so it's not because someone will tell you, we play that rhythm, and then every rhythm or every um, rhythmic choice has a name. So it's a Kuwaiti name. And so you refer to that rhythm when you're going to perform with your band, and everybody understands what you mean. However, as I was just saying, sometimes on top of that rhythm, you still have singing. But that is different from compositions. That is different from written songs, which are usually based on poems. So in a lot of Arabic music, uh, many songs are inspired by poetry, not all songs. And in Kuwait, you also, from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, you also had composers who would write songs for specific singers. And they would also write the lyrics. But traditionally, many songs with lyrics, so in this case, they are referred to as music, in fact, and not rhythm. Many of these songs oftentimes are inspired by very famous poems. So, for instance, in Kuwait, I was able to get some books of poems, but these poems are actually also songs for specific Kuwaiti singers, men and women singers. So yeah, so this is what I have discovered.
It's very fascinating and very different way of communication as opposed to in the West of how, yeah, you can write songs for different people, but knowing that there are certain rhythms that are happening for certain areas, as you said, for the land or, the desert and from the sea.
Yeah, Jerry, it's as if you, when you go on stage, it's as if you were kind of telling the band, hey, we're just gonna play this rhythm, and it's as if that was the deciding factor as to what's gonna happen on stage. So in Kuwait and also in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar, because they share similar musical traditions, there is this idea that, okay, today we're going to play Samri. So Samri, for instance, is a specific genre of music that exists in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia. And Samri, for instance, has many different types of rhythms. But, when you play Samri, you know that you're going to play these rhythms. And then when you start playing, I think, the idea is, okay, we're going to play that rhythm, and everybody understands what that means. So basically, in many musical traditions of the Northern Gulf, at least, rhythm is a foundation for what we, as in the West, understand as a musical performance. So the rhythmic choices and the decisions made about rhythm are really crucial as far as what's going to happen at that moment for the musicians, whether you perform Samri or Sawt, which is a different type of music as well in Kuwait, SAWT. So, the rhythm is essential. It's everything. But as I said, you also have a different type of performing where what matters the most is the poem that came out of that poem and the melody. But I think that poetry is essential in Arabic music in general as well. So, you have really different types of traditions. And for instance, I went to, when I was in Kuwait, I went to um, a, a get together, a celebration of the publication of a book about the history of Kuwait that was written by a Kuwaiti princess. And at the end of the event it was a really interesting, event in a great at a great cultural center. At the end of the evening, a group of performers came on stage, and they were playing Kuwaiti rhythms, and they played for a while, and they had specific percussions a lot of these percussions also, each percussion instrument has a different function. And so they came with their instruments and they played rhythms for like 40 minutes, different types of rhythms. And that's it. And there was absolutely no singing, and there was just rhythms. And there's a trance-like quality many times in these performances or these events. It's almost like the rhythms that are being played lead to some kind of trance. Because also Kuwaiti music has been influenced by so many different types of music, including African music and Gnawa music, which has a trance-like quality. And so I think that when you listen to Kuwaiti rhythms, there's so many other influences that are part of these performances. And so anyway, at the end of the event for the publication of the book, these Kuwaiti performers came and they just played their percussions for 40 minutes or so. And that's part of, that was the way to close the evening, to the event. And that's very common. So what I found fascinating as well is that these rhythms, they are part of the personality of the country. And, Kuwait, when I think of Kuwait now, I think of these rhythms. And if I hear these rhythms, then of course I will be thinking of Kuwait. It's kind of like, I think that every country has a sound, which is, created by an accumulation of many different sounds. And certainly that is part of the sonic signature of Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. These rhythms they are shared by different countries in the Gulf region. So I just find it fascinating that you really understand that now you are in that part of the world, because these rhythms, they are really important on so many levels for these societies. They are used for celebrations, they are used for weddings, they are used for commemorations. You can hear them on the radio. So they're really an important aspect of the identities of these countries in the Northern Arabian Peninsula. And I love that. I love kind of understanding their importance for the culture, for the identity, for like it's really a way for people also to come together and to vibe, or groove together around these rhythms. And it's really interesting. So what I find fascinating, at least in Kuwait, is that music. And so when I say music, I include these specific rhythms and these performances with percussions only. Music is extremely important. And sounds, matter. They really make a difference. And they are present, in different aspects, in different parts of Kuwaiti life. They are not separated from daily life and from important celebrations. They are an integral part of the culture, and in fact, you don't even need to turn on your TV or, to hear these sounds. You don't need to always go to a concert to hear these sounds. Sometimes all you need to do is walk around, or and someone is gonna play these rhythms, or it's a very I don't know, it's also very present. Well, I was saying you don't need to turn on TV, but it's also very present on national television. um but it's kind of like, I think you will hear these instruments, or you will see, the tar, which is one of the percussions. It's just how can I say? It's kind of like, you know, um it's part of the fabric of the country, from what I have observed. Also, I happen to spend a lot of time with and around musicians, and I spend time at their houses. I go to their rehearsals. I'm very much involved with the music scene, but even if you're not, you can really see these performers. It's not so difficult, to kind of like hear that music. I went to so many places and so many events where, at the end, these percussionists come and they're going to perform, and either samri or, you know, maybe something else, and it's amazing.
لا لا تحسب انك دايم قدامي مسروق لا لا تحسب انك دايم قدامي مسروق الدنيا هذه لا يغرك رضاها لا لا تحسب انك دايم
I
قدامي
wanted to add something else to what I was talking about. I was invited to a house of the niece of the singer that I'm writing about. And I showed up at this house, and it was mostly women and from the family, cousins, because in Kuwait, you meet together with your whole family, extended family, and so on and so forth once a week. It's a tradition. And so I was invited to that once a week get together. And what happened, Gerry, was so much fun. So they,
This is incredible access.
yes, I know.
You know that you know this.
I know I'm very lucky, and I was invited to so many incredible places and get-togethers. And so what happened is they knew what I was doing. And so they welcomed me, and of course, in a traditional in Arabic tradition, you start by having tea and then coffee and then sweets and then dates, and everybody is very kind. And also because in Arabic tradition, the guest is kind of sacred. So, in Eastern cultures, you probably know that because you went to Abu Dhabi recently. But in Eastern cultures, the guest is extremely important, and especially in Islam. So I felt like I was a queen. And because they knew what I was researching, they gave me a tar, which is one of the big flat percussions, and they started teaching me how to play.
Great.
And so, but before you play the tar, you have to and I think it's maybe not the only percussions, but I'm not sure. But you have to burn it a little bit. You have to use fire to make it so that it sounds a certain way. So they did that. They gave me the tar, and then one of the dancers who came for the occasion, because many musicians are also dancers, like music and dancing. They go really together as well in Kuwaiti music. Many performers, many musicians, many singers, many percussionists they also use movement a lot during the performances. So one of the dancers who came, also related to the singer I'm researching, her name, as I said, was Aisha Al-Marta. So she gives me the tar, and then she starts teaching me how to play. Also, I think one of the reasons she did that was to really make me understand what that instrument feels like. And I think the other reason is I'm not just an observer, but I'm a participant now. Because also the culture is collectivist. It's a collectivist culture. We're all doing this together. And I thought that was fascinating for me because I came as a researcher, and I ended up being also the one that was playing. And I ended up being the one that they were taking so many photos of. And I was kind of like, it was super interesting because the roles were reversed. So now I'm playing the guitar, and they're teaching me how to play these rhythms that I was talking about. And then they're taking photos of me while I do that. And then they all want to take photos with me as well. And it was so funny. And then what happened is that several women took several instruments. They also had other percussions, and they started playing for me. And they started showing me what this kind of music looks and feels and sounds like. And this was at home. This was a private home because many performances as well in the region happen at home, especially with women. Because historically, women, play at home, and they play at weddings, which is also private, etc., etc. So now I get to sit with these women who are starting to play these percussions for me, and then the dancers start dancing because that specific musical genre, which is called Samri, is also very much connected to dancing. And so now she starts showing me the dance that corresponds to the music. And it was so nice. And because I think I really got the context, it's not just understanding the technicalities of the rhythm, but it's also understanding the context. Where do these performances happen? How do they happen? Who is part of them? What's the environment like? What's the vibe? What's the groove? And I felt like it was full on immersion for me. And meanwhile, I keep being served sweets and everything on this planet, like chocolates and, you know, just like, and in fact, when I was in Kuwait, I went for music, but I left thinking so much about food. Now there were two competing interests in my mind, food and music. So,
Well,
so
I will tell you about some things about food and music at a later time. But go. You know what?
and so
I just want to say you are coming from such a place from the heart that obviously they could feel.
Yeah, and by the way, many of these women don't speak English. They don't really, or very few words. So what happened that night is that one of the Qanun player who introduced me to all of these wonderful women, she also brought her cousin who did the translation for me. So, you also have to know that many people in the world don't actually speak English, including in the Arabian Peninsula. And many Kuwaitis don't speak English. And so I was very fortunate that this other young woman, who is not a musician, but she came and she helped me understand what was going on. As I said, it's a teamwork. It's about the group. It's about what we can make happen together, how we help each other. And I think, at that moment, in that house, they were all helping me, and they were helping each other so they could all help me better. And it was collaborative. And I think there was also maybe solidarity because I'm a woman. They were all women. And I also remember, there was this idea of the collective spirit. So there's also a musician that was at a later time who told me he's a great singer from, he's Iranian Kuwaiti, and he's a really amazing singer. And I remember I went to his performance and the rehearsal, and he said, here, we don't think as I, we think as we. And I never forgot that statement. And that was so true when I was with these women in that house. But then it was true everywhere I went in Kuwait. I went to a music school and I was supposed to interview one musician, and then 8 people greeted me together, like other professors, other musicians, students, the dean of the school. It's just everybody was there to say hi to me. Everybody came. And so it was very interesting for me because many times I got ready to go and talk to one person like we're doing now. You interview one person and you end up in front of 15 people. Like in that house with the women, there were at least 15 people. And actually, I had to kind of really rethink my my approach to what I was doing because now like it's not gonna be the same type of conversation. I'm talking to one woman, but there are like 7 women next to her, and they also all want to say something. And and then at the same time, when you look at all these great performances of percussionists in Kuwait, it's a lot of people who play together. Most performances, I mean, there are also ensembles with perhaps 5 or 6 instrumentalists, but when I'm talking to you about, these performances when percussionists only play rhythms, it's a lot of people who come at once. At the reception for the princess and her book, I think maybe about 30 percussionists showed up at the end of the reception. And, when you see these performances, whether they're at home or outside home, it's usually a lot of people who come and play these rhythms together. And so there is this idea of the group, the group is really the heart of the culture as well. And then I think also is the heart of the music. We all play that beat together and we play the same and it's okay. And then someone is gonna stand up and start dancing. And then someone is going to stand up and maybe start singing as well. And it's really a collective spirit. Even oh my God, everywhere I went, I was planning on meeting one person and I would end up meeting 20 people. And I even went to an administration, a very important administration for the Kuwaiti fund. I think it's about, actually, I don't remember all the details, but even there, it's kind of like an office. You imagine you go to New York to a building, a high-rise building where you have all these offices, where you have accountants and so on and so forth. And even there, I was greeted by so many people, men and women, and even one woman, she closed the door of her office and she started performing for me with 7 other women. And so what I'm saying is that the spirit is different. It's, in America, it's really an individualistic culture, even though there are many communities that are not individualistic here. But I think the American spirit is, we're gonna make it on our own, and we have to, and this is how we prove our worth. But in Kuwait, it's not like that. It's we are working together. We are going to make something happen as
More
a
collective, more
with a,
more collective, and
yes.
the team.
Yes. And so the I, that's what that musician was telling me. The I doesn't really exist that much. It's more the we, you know. And I think it's like that in many parts of the world, in many countries, in many cultures. In fact, that might be the norm. And the United States could be an exception because it's a very individualistic culture. So I think that this might not be the norm. In fact, even this country is extremely big, but it doesn't mean that individualism is normal or common in other parts of the world.
Hey, that was journalist Emilie Pons. We thank her for this first episode. But ladies and gentlemen, there's episode 2 coming to you on the Groove Don't Lie podcast. Stay tuned.